Emery, you're someone who has been very on top of who and what Jalen Hurts has been from the very beginning, from college to now. What is a realistic expectation of Jalen coming into this season now with another offensive coordinator in his ear?
I think he'll be fine. I mean, honestly, it's all about just him staying healthy, and that was the biggest issue. He really played solid football last year, and then he had the injury, and that kind of affected some of the things that he was able to do as a player. But there's nothing wrong with Jalen Hurts, the player. I tweeted this out a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, about how his career and Joe Burrow career parallels in terms of the numbers, and also in terms of what they've been able to do. You know, they've both gone to a Super Bowl. They both lost a Super Bowl. So there should be no concerns or worries about Jalen Hurts and what he brings to the table as a player.
When you think about what this offense is going to be, I've heard guys like Lane Johnson say it's efficient and up tempo. I've heard Jason Kelsey describe Kellen Moore as very creative. As someone who watches as much tape as you do, what is a Kellen Moore offense potentially looking like in Philadelphia?
I mean, we saw how many years he was in Dallas. So, the fact that we saw him utilize both the run game and the vertical passing game or intermediate passing game, all of which I think jives well with what the personnel says in Philly. They have great talent at receiver, at tight end, at running back. So a lot of what we saw Dallas do, we should see Philadelphia do some of the same things.
Emery, what's going on? It's Nick here. I want to ask you about Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts. What does Kellen Moore need to do to put Jalen Hurts in the best position to succeed heading into this season? What strengths can he bring out of Jalen Hurts?
You know what's interesting, man, and it's not a knock to you or the question you're asking, but I find it fascinating that everyone always focuses on scheme and the coordinator. It's the player. There's nothing Jalen Hurts can do or can't do that Kellen Moore can or can't call. You know, again, we're talking about somebody that has insane production, insane efficiency, has gotten the Eagles to a Super Bowl. So there's only so many plays you can draw up inside zone, outside zone. There's only so many plays you can draw up like RPOs and whatnot. So I feel like when people consistently ask about those, the coordinators, and they're making it seem like they make the player, but that's not true. I brought this up on a separate show I was on, where, and again, I'm a big fan of Bill Walsh, and everybody was talking about the West Coast offense, this West Coast offense, that. Yeah, it works when you have Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Brent Jones, Roger Craig, Tom Rathman, a very good offensive line. Then you back up Joe Montana with a Steve Young. Yeah, of course your offense is going to look great, right? So the talent trumps everything, and the Eagles have tremendous talent. What the difference was between 2022 and 2023, the defense sucked. And now that, to me, is the biggest change that we should see moving forward, because he got better pieces on defense than he had last season. So I'm not worried about Kellen Moore. He can call any kind of plays he want to call. We saw it work with Dak, similar kind of quarterback with Jalen Hurts. Although Hurts is probably a more powerful runner, Dak is a little bit more of a shiftier runner, a quicker runner. Both throw the deep ball rather well. Dak may have a little bit stronger arm or good velocity, but both are efficient. Both are very productive. Both are able to move the offense consistently down the field. So I have no problems in the offense side of Philly. I expect Philly to average at least 30 points a game with what they have personnel-wise out there on the field.
Talk with Emort Hunt, the playbook at F-Ball Game Plan on Twitter, X Football Game Plan on YouTube. Also, don't forget about his weekly on the Ross Tucker podcast, as well as his all over the place on CBS Sports HQ. If I'm forgetting something, Emery, let me know, but you're a busy man, and I appreciate you jumping on with us. You mentioned the defense. I want to ask you about that as well, because the Eagles basically admitted last year wasn't just not good, it was bad. They cleaned house to the coaching staff. They brought in all new linebackers. They brought back CJ Gardner-Johnson. So what is a player on the defense that you are most interested in seeing what they do in 2024?
Those rookie corners, because I think those rookie corners are excellent. You got Quinyon Mitchell. You bring in Cooper DeJean, who can kind of play a hybrid role, but bringing all of those guys into into toe. And that's what happened with Philly last year, if we're being completely honest. He just looked old in the secondary because they are old in terms of the cornerback position. And Darius Slay is a solid veteran, but he's up there in age. So you get younger. You get a younger version of him in Quinyon Mitchell. You get a more explosive, dynamic ball hawk in Cooper DeJean. You bring back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, pair him up with Reed Blankenship. You got two really good safeties now that also can take the ball away. Maddox is coming back. Listen, so getting better there, getting younger, getting more athletic there helps them out as a whole. And you're getting guys that can play press, that can, that don't shy away from press coverage, that can mirror match with guys inside, and can cover on the back end, turn the ball over. And I know you can't bank on turnovers, but if you have guys that can kind of tie up receivers because they play good man coverage, and you add the fact in you're now going to put your three really good D linemen on the field, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Carter as well, with those edge rushers that you can now rotate in waves, it generates the pressure. You got good coverage on the back end. That's how the ball gets turned over. So I expect Philly's defense to look like it did in 2022 and not what we saw, the sluggish, non-aggressive defense that really couldn't stop anybody, that put those guys in a bind the back end of the season with the last 5 games of the season, including the playoffs. We won't see that this year from Philadelphia. They got better personnel, younger personnel, more athletic, and then they'll be able to subsequently have the production they're looking for out there on the field.
Emory, the Eagles, they lost Hassan Reddick. He goes to the New York Jets, but they bring in a former Jet in Bryce Huff. What can people expect out of Bryce Huff's personality as well as what he can do on the field?
No, he's another one of these guys that are kind of in vogue now. The shorter, squatty, ball get off type edge rushers. So a lot of what they've seen over the course of his career in Brandon Graham, not saying he's a 1-to-1, but the Eagles have had types like that. Trent Cole was one of those guys. Graham is one of those guys. So Hugh Douglas was one of those guys. So it's not like they haven't seen these shorter, squatty type edge rushers. I think they're getting that in Huff. Finally gets that opportunity. I'm excited to see what Nolan Smith can do in his second season in terms of growth, and because that's another one that has that same type of ability as well. So I'm excited for what they bring to the table. The most important part was getting both Davis and Carter on the field at the same time and allowing those guys to kind of tie up those interior offensive linemen like they did in Georgia or at Georgia, to where you saw those guys like a Nolan Smith go out there and be able to do what he did from a damage perspective. So that's why I'm super excited about Philly, because I feel like they brought a lot to the table in terms of personnel, and now they're getting a lot of these guys ready to go.
Couple more for Emory Hunt before we let him go. I wanted to ask you about a couple other teams in the NFC East, Emory, specifically about Washington. They fascinate me because, I'm not a big believer in Dallas right now because of the players they lost after last year. And I think Jaden Daniels, I don't want to talk about Caleb Williams and all this stuff, but Jaden Daniels, he has a chance to be something special, I think, in the NFL. So what is your perspective on Washington coming into this year?
Yeah, they're going to be good. Their issue last year, honestly, was an offense. They couldn't stop anybody. They were 32nd in the NFL total defense and in a lot of defensive categories. So you can't get worse than what they were last year. So I feel like bringing in a Dan Quinn should help them improve. And they don't have to go from 32nd to top 5 defense. They just can't be 32nd anymore. If they can get to 20 with the offense that they have, with some of the personnel pieces that I've mentioned with Philly, they got good receivers themselves. I mean, you got Terry McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson, you bring in Luke McCaffrey, you have Diami Brown, you got 2 good tight ends, Zach Ertz and also Ben Sinnott get drafted. Jayden Daniels is a +1 type player, helps evens out the math defensively because of his ability as a runner. So their offense should get, 24 to 30 points a game. And if they can get stops, they could just get to 19th in total defense. Then we're talking about a team that could vie for maybe that 6th or 7th playoff spot. I feel like there's about 5 teams in the NFC, with 2 of them that have rookie quarterbacks, in Washington and also Chicago, that could be in play for one of those last 2 playoff spots.
I mentioned the Cowboys. I got to ask you about them. They're every NFC East fan's most favorite to hate team out there, right? So, but what is the Cowboys coming into this year after that just ridiculous loss in the postseason. They change defensive coordinators. They lose a couple starters on the offensive line. They bring back Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, I don't even know what to think of that still. But what are the Dallas Cowboys in your eyes heading into this year?
They're still a really good team, a solid team on both sides of the ball. I like how they replenished the offensive line. We talked about the Eagles doing what they needed to do in the secondary. I thought the Cowboys aced the draft and bringing in 3 offensive linemen. Cooper Beebe was one of my top interior linemen in the draft, and they got him as a guard coming out of Kansas State. And then when you look at what they already have, you got to like their chances as well. Bringing back Ezekiel Elliott serves 2 purposes. One, it helps give them a pace setter in the run game. That's what they lacked last year. They couldn't set the table running the football. No one respected their backfield, and they couldn't lean on them to close out games. So now they found themselves in a bunch of shootouts. That changes with Ezekiel Elliott, who showed you last year he still has enough to where he can be, your 4-minute offense guy, your leadoff guy, and then you can let those other backs that they have in the depth chart, fall in place where they need to be. And I think that's the value he brings. Also, he's a good in pass pro, so it helps Dak Prescott get a little bit more time to push that ball vertically down the field. The receiving core, Brandon Cooks just consistently produces at a high level, and we know CeeDee Lamb was about 40-something yards short of the league lead in yards. So we know they have talent there. They have talent at tight end. Biggest thing, sure, they can stop the run. They could not stop the run last year, so they're going to need a big year from Mozzie Smith to step up and be his guy, be what they expected him to be on that defense. I do know Mike Zimmer, and I know I just spent, earlier talking about coaches, but I like that Zimmer brings the attitude to that defense, and he won't let you not, play with the right attitude, the right intensity. And when you add that up front in conjunction with getting back Diggs healthy, we saw Deron Bland catch every interception thrown his way. So you get 2 ball hogs back there. The aggressiveness picks up on defense. Again, the defense doesn't have to be top 3, but they can't be what they were last year. I don't think they'll be. That's why I like the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia to both be, 1 and 2. If you want to flip them, that's fine too. But just both of those teams will be in the postseason and have a chance to make a significant run.
For more football coverage at FBall Game Plan on the Twitter X platform, Football Game Plan on YouTube. Check out all of his appearances on the Raw Sucker podcast, as well as CBS Sports HQ. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Emort Hunt, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. My friend, appreciate you navigating technology and jumping on with us.
Thank you, Josh and Nick.